Cue complete and utter hysteria. All of a sudden, the war in Ukraine, including the possible use of chemical weapons, doesn't matter one jot. Neither does the confirmation that David Ames was killed by a homegrown Islamist terrorist. That conversation will be avoided yet again. So too will the criminal damage inflicted by the eco-terrorists of the Extinction Rebellion and Just Stop Oil, wreaking havoc in our cities and on our oil supplies. Not to mention the all-important once-in-a-generation cost of living crisis threatening to cripple many ordinary, hard-working Brits financially. No, today and for the rest of the week, and probably much longer, the mainstream media and the political establishment are going to insist there is only one story in this country that means anything, whether Boris Johnson broke his own lockdown rules in the scandal now known as Partygate.
To Sky News. We're cracking out of the break because we have some breaking news to come from Westminster.
It is being reported that the Prime Minister is among those who has been fined. This massively piles the pressure on the Prime Minister. This is a crisis for the Prime Minister.
I think Tory MPs should be considering very carefully now Boris Johnson's future.
If in the unlikely event, although who knows, the Prime Minister receives 6 sequential fixed penalty notices, then he could be on the hook for over £10,000.
I mean, I've had tweets from people saying, for goodness sake, we changed the Prime Minister during World War II. You can't just keep a Prime Minister who has lied to the public and to Parliament, who has broken the law because there is war in Europe. Sonny, I just want you to listen to that. That's the sound of silence. And that's what we're getting from number 10, from number 11, and in fact, the entire cabinet at the moment.
Well, in actual fact, there hasn't been silence from number 10 because Boris apologised for the infringement this evening and paid his fine. But this will not matter one bit to those who've had the PM in their sights from the very beginning. This evening, Boris appeared contrite as he gave a reasonable account of that fateful day, June the 19th, when after a 7 a.m. start, 8 government meetings and a visit to a school, he stopped to acknowledge his birthday with colleagues for all of 10 minutes, which is hardly the crime of the century, is it?
I understand the anger that many will feel that I myself fell short when it came to observing the very rules which the government I lead had introduced to protect the public. And I accept in all sincerity that people had the right to expect better.
Now, let me be very clear before people take me out of context. I remain disgusted that the government imposed these lockdown rules on citizens, stopping us from visiting dying relatives, attending to abused children, and making important decisions for ourselves in a so-called freedom-loving society. Those in power, who were successfully managing to terrify the population with the most devastating propaganda campaign in recent history, were never scared themselves. This ragtag bunch of toffs were downing rosé and champagne at number 10 Downing Street, often with Carrie Johnson, it seems. They weren't locking themselves up at home like we had to because of a mortal dread of this virus. To me, that's what matters. And it concerns me deeply that in an exclusive interview on GBNews at the weekend with Esther McVeigh, Boris would not rule out the possibility of lockdowns in the future.
I want to avoid any such thing ever happening again. And I can't rule out something, Esther. I can't, say that we wouldn't be forced to do non-pharmaceutical interventions again of the kind that we did.
Have they learned nothing? It's not their right to control healthy people in this manner. Surely these fines teach them that. But they couldn't even follow the ludicrous restrictions, could they? But, and this is the big but, I believe in democracy and I believe in process. And increasingly, the media elite in this country believe it is in their power to drive out a Prime Minister elected in a landslide, as evidenced by the hand-wringing about his so-called refusal to resign, as if he's barricaded himself in number 10. We've seen the same tactic employed by the BBC, ITV News, Sky News, Channel 4 and many newspapers over the past week too when it comes to Rishi Sunak and his wife's totally legal financial arrangements. So this is what they do. Attack a story mercilessly, cover it infinitum, convince Tory MPs it's the only story that matters and the only way for it to go away is for Sunak to quit. We've seen cancel culture sweep through society in recent years and it's taking away our ability for people to make mistakes, to repent for them and then recover. So did the PM make a mistake by implementing inhumane lockdown rules he could never follow himself, that his very social wife couldn't be bothered to follow either? Absolutely he did. The rules disgust me. The damage to this country thanks to lockdowns will take a generation from which to recover. But should the PM and the Chancellor plunge this country into total crisis right now by resigning? Absolutely not. There's a European war going on, for God's sake. There's an energy crisis. The NHS is spiralling out of control. Just imagine the impact of a lame duck Prime Minister or an acting Prime Minister trying to manage this bonfire in the middle of a divisive Tory leadership election, which would probably involve half the cabinet. Conservative MPs have to make some tough choices over the next few weeks, and many Brits will get to voice how they feel in a democratic manner at the local elections on May the 5th. That's how democracy works. So do not allow this vile cabal of the BBC, the London liberal media establishment, the Labour Party and the SNP to undermine your vote. What happened was wrong. Absolutely. But does a fixed penalty notice, basically the equivalent of a speeding fine, it's not even a criminal conviction, mean we should boot from office a PM elected in a landslide, currently dealing with a war, pandemic recovery and economic crisis? I say absolutely not. For once, just think about what's best for this United Kingdom.